All right, so here we have demonstrated that we have access to questions through a RESTful API. We also notice that we have access to all the quizzes as well. Right? But notice that there's no relationship whatsoever between any of these quizzes and the questions. So how can we associate these questions and associate them to their parent quizzes? So let's do that. Right? Let's head over to our Mongo database, right? And we know that we have questions. We have also quizzes, right? Here are the quizzes, right? But notice that right now there is no relationship between any of these, right? So the way we're going to create the relationships, there's actually several ways, right? The classical way, the way you would do it in a relational database is that you would have a field in the quiz which would be a foreign key that has the value of a primary key of one quiz, right? Which says, each quiz would be a child and says, hey, my parent quiz is that over there, right? And then you would use joins, right, to join data fetching it from the question and the quiz, so you would have data from both of them. So that's the classical way you would do it in relational database. The alternative way is to have a mapping collection or a mapping table where the quiz doesn't know anything about the question, and the question doesn't know about anything about the quiz, but instead you have a separate alternate table that has references to both and says, hey, that question belongs to that quiz over there, right? So that's an alternative implementation. Now, those are the two only ways that you can implement it using a relational database, right? And we certainly can do that here in a non-relational database like Mongo. But I'm going to show you an alternative way that you cannot implement it in a relational database. You can only implement it in a non-relational database such as Mongo. So what we're going to do is that in the quiz is actually going to have an additional field that is going to have an array of all the quizzes that belong to that particular quiz, right? And that array is going to have references to the questions that belong to that particular quiz. So let's do that. So for instance, let's add, say, this question, right? We're going to add it to this quiz, right? So let's do that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to grab that quiz. We're going to say db.quizzes. We're going to update the quiz, whose ID is this ID right here. So I'm going to grab that right there, copy and paste. And once I have that particular quiz, I'm going to update it using the following update statement. I'm going to push, right? So the push operator, notice it has a $sign. What it's going to do is that it's going to add an item to an array, right? And that array is going to be an array called questions, right? So each quiz is going to have a property called questions, which is going to be an array of all the quizzes that belong to that quiz, okay? All the questions that belong to that quiz, right? So I'm going to say push onto a property called questions. Notice that the questions property doesn't exist right now in any of my quizzes, which is fine, right? Push is smart enough to know that if the property doesn't exist, it'll create it as a brand new property. So I'm going to say push. So push takes as argument a JSON object that says the property that we're pushing onto. So this is onto the questions property, and then the item that we're actually pushing into that property. So what are we pushing? We're going to push this ID here, right? We're going to add this question to that particular quiz. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to paste it right here, paste. And let's see if we have everything closed up. All right, let's do that. All right, so it looks like we were able to update it. We can look at the quizzes again. Notice that the quiz A right now, not only does it have a title, it now has a brand new property called questions, right? That is now an array that contains a single element, okay? And so right now it's just a string, right? Ideally, we would like to be able to do is then use that string to go fetch that particular question later on. All right, so how about adding a couple more questions onto some other quizzes, right? Let's see. Let's add a question to quiz B. So let's use the same update statement that we were using earlier. So we're going to replace this ID instead of for the quiz A. We're going to use quiz B. Copy. I'm going to paste. So notice what I'm going to do here, right? I'm going to keep the same question ID. So this quiz ID, I'm going to use the same question ID, right? So basically, two quizzes are going to be using the same question, which is fine, right? You could have the same question appear in a quiz, then later in a midterm, and then later on a final. That's fine, right? You're just reusing the same question, which is brilliant, right? Now, that's something that you could not do if you were doing a one-to-many relationship in a relational database where the quiz points to the parent question, right? Because now that quiz only has a single parent, right? There would be no way of having multiple parents. The only way to achieve that is to have a mapping, right, where you have a many-to-many that says, oh, well, all these questions belong to that one quiz. The problem with that implementation is that now you could really have many-to-many, right? We have one quiz is being used by many quizzes, or many quizzes are having the same question, right? Which is fine, but this one is much cleaner, right? You have a quiz knows exactly which questions belong to that quiz, which is perfect. So let's do that. Let's list the quizzes. Now we have two quizzes, quiz A and quiz B, are referencing the same exact question. See that? Let's quiz B. How about we add another question to quiz B? So let's go up one, and maybe let's see. This was one of the questions. Let's add maybe a true/false question to quiz B. Right. So let's remove this ID of that question, and let's add that other question. Right. See that? All right. Let's look at all the quizzes. There we go. So we have quiz A has one question, and quiz B has now two questions. See that? Right now, the representation is that the questions are only represented as strings, but we'll see how we can ask Mongo to perhaps join these two collections and not just retrieve the ID, the string, but actually retrieve actually data from that other collection, the actual question object.